It's time to talk about the college football coaching carousel.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast a part of your day each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're going to be talking about the transfer portal and how it is so vastly impacted by all this coaching carousel talk, let alone the actual actions that are still to come. We're also going to discuss all the different leads and all the intel about different coaches, how some guys are just going to kind of trade places. And we're also going to discuss my own predictions as well. And that's what we lead off with. Right off the bat, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. This is my pick. It's not based on intel, but it's just based on logic. I think Lane Kiffin will eventually stay with Ole Miss. And here's why I say that. If he wanted Florida or if he wanted LSU, he could probably get either one of them. But to do that, he would need to do things a little bit differently than most coaches would, because he's going to likely be in the playoff, barring some completely unforeseen and just random act by Ole Miss in terms of bombing the last part of their season. The end of their season's not that difficult now that they're past the Oklahoma game. Now, don't get me wrong, Georgia and then turn around playing Oklahoma back-to-back, that's a pretty rough way to go, and they were both on the road. But that being stated, they split, and they've also beaten LSU. I think that the games that are remaining, there's a really good chance that the Rebels win out, and they're going to get a decent seed here. They might even be in the SEC title game. It's not out of the realm that they're going to be a team with a bye. If that happens, he would have to wait till January. Not saying it couldn't happen, but LSU and Florida, are they both, not one or the other, but are they both willing to wait until the end? How would that work? It would be really awkward, because if neither one of them names a coach by, let's say, December 15th at the latest, December 20th, and most of the other coaches are off the board, how's that going to go? Those fan bases are going to lose their mind. We'll see, but my pick is he stays at Ole Miss, and I could be completely wrong. For the record, I think if he picks one or the other, it's Florida, because his wife, now that they're back together, they divorced. I've been told they're back together. She's a Florida grad, and Lane loves the state of Florida. Remember, he coached at Florida Atlantic. I'm not discounting LSU. It just seems more natural that he would go to UF. There's more fit overall for the family. And for the record, he has a couple of daughters at Ole Miss as well. So it's just a very dynamic situation, but he's top of the board for a lot of schools. We'll see what happens there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just make some other predictions here. We'll start with some of the schools that people want to hear about, predictions and whatnot. The one that most want to know if I'm picking Kiffin to stay at Ole Miss, well, who's Florida getting? That one's the one I have the hardest time with, because if they don't get Kiffin, I don't think they're getting Marcus Freeman, because I don't think he's going anywhere. I have no idea who's going to Florida, because that fan base has a very, very narrow view of who they should get. That one is a trendsetter. It's an elite job. I don't know if there's going to be any satisfaction if they don't get Kiffin or Freeman, because from what I'm told, Jeff Brom doesn't want to leave Louisville. From what I'm told, Eli Drinkwitz is very unlikely to leave Missouri. Now, you keep offering enough money, those things can change, but who would they get if those four were off the board? I have no idea. And I've got a whole bunch of people here, but I don't think that hardly any fan base is ever happy with coaching hires. It's very rare. But this one, because they hired Billy from the G6, and now he obviously failed and they fired him, they want a big name P4 coach. That's going to be interesting. It's pretty similar with LSU, although I could be wrong. I think there's a lot of different possibilities there. Maybe Joe Brady changes his mind. Like the reason he went to the NFL way back when, he's not a guy that really likes recruiting. I don't think he's going to jump in the boat and suddenly like that. But outside of him, how many guys do you really think LSU has ties to that they might like? I'm just going to throw out a dark horse candidate. If it's not Lane, if it's not Marcus, and that is Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator that's at Miami. Just throwing him in. I don't think he'll end up being the pick, but that's somebody who has ties to Louisiana, as he's a native of that state, and he's been a very good coach for a long time. So maybe he ends up being a guy that finds his way back to LSU. You never know. Not likely, but it's possible. And for those of you that are wondering, why didn't I bring up Jedd Fisch with Florida? I'm not saying he isn't the guy. It's possible. I think they could do a heck of a lot worse than him. And by the way, he is a Florida grad, but Fisch is probably not top of the board because he hasn't won at a truly elite level, and he's helped rebuild programs. He's now at Washington. He's doing a pretty good job. They just spanked Illinois, but it's really hard to say. If they don't get Marcus Freeman, if they don't get, obviously, Lane Kiffin, who would Florida go with? And I think LSU's kind of similar boat. Those kind of set the trend. Now let's talk about Penn State. This is just my take. I've said it before. I think they should go for Matt Campbell. I have no idea if he's even on the list. I don't have any intel with that job, but everybody seems to think it's Rule. I'm going to go ahead and say I think that's a mistake if they go that route, because I don't think he's a good enough recruiter to do what they need to do. Just saying that right now. If I'm proven wrong, I'll be happy to admit it. But he's done a decent job at it. But you got to be an elite recruiter to replace Franklin. Franklin's an elite recruiter. That's not debatable. Not a great game day guy, but if you don't get the talent, it doesn't matter. Rule is at Nebraska. They've got the resources. The location is terrible for modern football. Absolutely terrible. Is Penn State a better job? Yes. Will he take it? I don't know. It's his alma mater. He knows the AD, but that's still a risk. Do you want to go out and do the things they require if you're going to take that job at your alma mater in terms of recruiting? You got to love it. You can't just fake it with recruits. They know. Their parents know. The coaches know. I'm not so sure that's a great fit either. When we come back, I'm going to kind of go down the list, and I might have a few surprises for people. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that I do on a couple that I think are going to happen, and a couple assistant coaches that you need to know, because if they jump in the boat, or if a school says, you know what, we're not going to wait and see what the Kiffins of the world do, we're probably not getting them anyway. We're going to talk about that next here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda, who crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, including IIHS Top Safety Pick Awards. They've got more than anybody else since August of 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same attention to how we craft every model, and you can create everyday drives that feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. We sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. We are also brought to you by our friends over at Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus. Powered by Peloton IQ, it's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This training is reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you stay planned up, staying motivated, and knowing exactly what you have to do to reach peak performance. You're going to love how they have the swivel screen, so even if you're on the ground, if you're getting up and down, back and forth, they have a screen that fits your game for anything you want to do with training. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. Thank you once again for checking out this live edition of the Portal Podcast. I'm Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. We're going to be doing live shows each day at noon Eastern to talk about the coaching carousel, how it impacts the transfer portal. That's coming up in a few minutes. And we're going to talk about recruiting and all that. But right now, this week and next will be the heaviest discussion broadly with the coaching carousel, and there's no reason to avoid it. So here are a couple of predictions and overviews. Number one, this won't shock anybody. And for those of you that do not know, I also run Locked On Seminoles. Obviously, that's Florida State. I have said about 1,000 times that I think Mike Norvell needs to be canned, but I understand $54 million or whatever the total is for him to be removed from Florida State is a lot. Two things here. Number one, that is a great job for the right hire. Not a good one, a great job. It's top 5 to top 10, depending on how you want to look at it. You can win national titles at Florida State. That being the case, how's the money going to work? They just did a stadium renovation. They had the situation with all the lawyer fees with the recent ACC lawsuit. and they're still trying to save money to buy their way out of the grant of rights. All those things. That being the case, I still think Norvell will be out at the end of this year because I think Florida State is going to land on their nose down the stretch and lose at least 3 of their final 5, if not all 5 of them. They're going to be basically forced to fire Mike Norvell. But because of the money situation, and I'm actually okay with the following, I don't think it will be a quote-unquote massive hire like a lateral move. I think they'll go the coordinator route. Right now, and they could go 100 different ways, Buster Faulkner, to me, genius is too much. The offensive mind that finds a way around things. Like they're really good up front. Brent Key's a great offensive line coach, but he's the head guy and he oversees it. But they use motions and do things kind of similar to Malzahn, ironically. The overview they have of the program and how they want to run it, though, through Haynes King is incredible. They got a top 20 rushing attack, and their passing game is pretty good, and they hit a lot of big plays off of it. Give him Florida State's skill position talent, in particular Mekhi Danzy. I mean, that would be ridiculous. I think he would be a great hire for Florida State. That's who I would go after because he wouldn't be as expensive as somebody like, obviously, Lane Kiffin, but at the same time, he's coached under Kirby Smart in 2022 and 2023. He's been under Brent Key, and he's coached other places too. He's a quarterback guy, and Florida State needs an offensive mind that can really score. You're not going to win titles in today's realm without a really good scheme. Faulkner's proven he can do it at Georgia Tech. No offense to them, but you can get way more talent on a consistent basis in Tallahassee. That would be my pick if I was Florida State and they did not go the head coaching route. Speaking of Deep South and a job that's not open yet that I still think will, is Auburn. I haven't heard anything, and it's ironic because I actually live in Auburn. I keep asking people, and I just keep getting the same thing. I haven't heard anything. Some people want him to stay, some don't, among the mega boosters and all that stuff. I don't know what has to happen, but what is it? They play Kentucky this week? If they lost that game, there could be some movement. That's going to be rough. That would be, matter of fact, that would be a disaster. If they get beat by Kentucky, that's a Monday firing, maybe even a Sunday firing. That'd be rough, but you never know. It's kind of hard to say. Hey, Sam, I agree, Brian. I saw the short documentary on Kiffin and Ole Miss. He seems to have really found his place there right now. Yeah, if Kiffin stays at Ole Miss, and this is for those of you that are listening to this later on audio, this is from the chat, Sam Hancock. Look, I said earlier, I think Kiffin will stay. That's a white guess, but he's got ties there. He's winning there. He's done something nobody else has done there. He's going to take them to the playoff. He's basically as high up the ladder as you're going to get. And there's nothing wrong with taking the Florida LSU jobs. Don't get me wrong, but it's pretty simplistic, and he's got family ties there now that his ex is back with him and in Oxford. His daughters are at Ole Miss. A lot of reasons to stay. We'll see what he does. Sam Hancock again. I have heard some are all tied to potential Auburn job. Any attraction to Florida? I don't think that Florida, after the G5/G6 thing bombed with Billy, and remember, Billy came from one of the schools in Louisiana. Wasn't it Louisiana, Lafayette or something like that? I forget which one he was at. I don't think they're going to go that route as easily, but Summerall would be a good pick. He has ties to the state of Alabama, too. He was at Troy prior. Good football coach. I wouldn't have any problem with that. I wouldn't have any problem with Florida State hired Summerall. I think he's a good football coach. But you get into the arrogance, like, what do you mean we're not hiring a P4 coach? That's I heard LSU's not that interested. Some of their boots, they don't want to hire somebody from one of the schools inside the state. It's kind of goofy. All right, Ronald Mathis. Kiffin going to get a life contract at Ole Miss. He could. That's a great point. I don't know what they would offer him, like yearly. They would probably have provisions if they're going to give him like a life contract kind of thing. But that's not out of the question. They're not going to go out if they were in the same situation a year from now, like they needed a coach. You know, they went interim for a year and they just did a whole year search. They're not going to get somebody like Kiffin that's already proven. It's not on the same level as some of those other jobs, although it's one tier below. It'd be interesting to see what they try to do to keep him. Hancock, I feel the same way. Ronald, he really is in stride at Ole Miss right now. Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a time in Ole Miss football where, I just really don't think there's a time they've ever been close to being like this on a consistent basis. Jim Marshall, Are there any highly regarded coaches out of FCS or Group of Five? The Summerall guy, John Summerall at Tulane, he was at Troy. There's some other guys that I don't know as much about. The head coach at UTSA is good for some people, etc. There are several, Texas State, trying to think which, there's another one that I'm probably missing, but Sunbelt, etc. There's always somebody, but do they want to jump into the major jobs and deal with the NIL and the booster stuff? Like if you go to Florida, you got to deal with the Bull Gator Club. I'm going to tell you right now, head coaches generally don't like that stuff. And I'm being very kind here on a live show. Very kind. So it's not for everybody. How many are good enough is one thing. How many are good enough and would have an interest? That's a separate entity. So it's a split in the road. It's really hard to say. Ronald Morris, as Meemaw said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's right. This is a good pick. Ronald Mathis says Summerall and Golish. Yeah, Alex Golish at USF. He was with the staff that was at UCF. He was there for quite a while. And then he went up to Tennessee with that staff. And then he got his own gig at USF. Remember, he went into Florida this year and won at the Swamp. So that's a pretty interesting one. Also, the North Texas head coach. This is a guy I don't know. I don't know much about him, but they're top 5 in like multiple offensive categories. And their quarterback just threw for 600 yards. That'll probably get you some interest somewhere. Sam Hancock. Does Butch Jones make his way back to the SEC? That's a good question. I doubt it because he was not very well revered as a play caller / like his offense was too generic. I doubt it. You never know. You never know. Ronald Moore, Summerall to LSU. Highly doubt that. Golish to Florida. The other, I could see possibly Golish. I highly doubt Summerall because LSU people do not want to hire in-state guys. It's a weird deal. You have to know Southern Louisiana, understand it in particular, but that's what I've been told several times. Ronald Mathis, Memphis head coach, pretty darn good too. Memphis has got a chance to make the playoff. They've done a lot of good. They beat USF. Wouldn't surprise me. Hugh Freeze basically is day-to-day. The Auburn job, like again, I live in Auburn, and I have no idea what's going to happen there. I think they're really not sure. And my guess is they would rather it not happen this year because there are so many job openings and Auburn's not at the top of the board. But if they went to the finish line, especially again, if they lose to Kentucky this weekend, and I don't care what the score is, no bueno. That's going to possibly force the people at Auburn to make a move. Ronald Mathis researched the quarterbacks and the North Texas head coach recruited and landing during his career. Okay, I can do that. It will amaze you. If you can evaluate quarterbacks, man, you can do a lot of things. Last name is Morris. I'm going to guess he's the guy that is now at Virginia. That's possible. All right. Appreciate the comments. If anybody else wants to throw something in the chat, I'll happily read and we can go from there. But it's fun when you get people in the chat and you're discussing it. Now back into my list. Just going to run down some things, kind of quick hitters. But this is just what I've heard / intuition. I'll denote on each side of it. I have heard nothing recently on Oklahoma State. I know they got I forget the guy's name that was at Oklahoma State as a player. He's coaching at the Falcons, but I can't remember. I assume that's what will end up happening. We'll see. I've said this before on the show. Michigan State, I expect to open after speaking with Matt Sheehan. He is the guy that runs Locked On Spartans. MSU fans are livid on how bad they are, and they should be. Michigan State fans are livid. Now, the question is, does Magic Johnson, who's an alum, who's a billionaire and all that stuff, does he get involved with helping in this? Because it's going to be hard to climb the ladder if you're Michigan State. But they got some money. It's $33 million to buy out Jonathan Smith, by the way. That's not fun. It is what it is. But it's a Big Ten job. A lot of people like the mid-sized city kind of thing. East Lansing's a good city. It's a cool place to go see a game. I can tell you that. Michigan State, if it comes open, that'll demand some attention. I wouldn't be surprised if James Franklin would be involved with that one, but I'll come back to him in a second. Here's the job that hasn't opened up yet, and I think the next 2 weeks will dictate whether it does. Oklahoma. If they lose not one, but both of Tennessee and Alabama, and I expect them to, I think Venables is going to get fired. If that happens, That's going to be a mad scramble because there are a couple of elite assistants on that staff, the line coaches, and there are also some really good recruits that are committed. How does that go? Before anybody asks, I have no opinion on who they would go after. I have not spoken to anybody, but that's a darn good job. You're 3 hours from Dallas. It's a pretty good state for high school football. There's 5 to 10 kids a year that can play at Oklahoma in that state conservatively. That's a great job. Tradition, money. It's a Jordan Brand school. It's an oil well school, meaning there's a lot of oil money there. That's a really good job. NC State, if Dave Doran steps down, that's a pretty good gig. I could see a pretty good coach in it up there. I wouldn't be shocked if not just, I'm probably going to name this guy for a bunch of different jobs, to be honest with you, but James Franklin, I could see if Wisconsin comes open, if Michigan State came open, Virginia Tech is open. That's one that he's reportedly possibly going to, NC State, any of those I could see. Those are possibilities. He's coaching the North and the South. So James Franklin's a little bit ubiquitous. He's a little bit of everywhere. So we'll see. If it is not, keyword, if it is not Franklin at Virginia Tech, does Beamer go? I have no contacts at South Carolina, but that's an interesting one. Remember, Beamer, that's his dad. That's the famous coach. And he did go to Virginia Tech. Possible. I could see that. And then the South Carolina job would open. I mean, who knows? By the way, South Carolina plays at Ole Miss this week, so that probably isn't going to help his cause. I doubt that goes very well for him. We talked about Jed Fish, talked about Buster Faulkner. I think he's a great coordinator. Florida State, Auburn, South Carolina, Virginia Tech, anybody that gets Faulkner. If he went to Penn State, I think it'd be a really good hire. I think he's the top assistant for me regardless. And speaking of, let's stay in the same state. And they used to coach on the same staff. Glenn Schumann, the linebacker coach and defensive coordinator for the Bulldogs under Kirby Smart. Very good recruiter, tremendous evaluator. Just about every linebacker that starts for him for at least a year gets drafted. Now, I know they recruit at an elite level, but that means you know how to evaluate and develop. Not one or the other, both. I could see Florida State, Virginia Tech, and a bunch of other schools going after him. I'm guessing he's waiting on elite jobs, LSU, Florida, or Florida State call, possibly. I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn called, he'd be interested. But it's going to take a certain job because he's got such a good gig working for Kirby. We'll see how that goes. Rhett Lashlee, I've talked about this a bunch. It's going to be hard to get him away from SMU. That's deep pockets in Dallas, including oil money, but he's a great offensive mind. Where would he go? I have no idea, but he's coached at Auburn before, so if that job comes open, possible. Maybe if Florida misses on a couple guys like Marcus Freeman and, of course, Lane Kiffin, maybe Lashlee gets a call. That's a possibility. Just going to go ahead and throw this out there. I don't think Jeff Brom's going anywhere, but every one of these jobs needs to call his agent. Very good football coach. I don't think he's going anywhere. I already talked about Shannon Dawson. In some capacity, LSU would make sense. Wouldn't shock me if Florida State gave him a call. Be ironic, wouldn't it? He's coaching at Miami. He takes the Florida State gig. It would not shock me at all. Colin Klein. What about him? He's the A&M coordinator. He's done a darn good job with Marcel Reed. That offense is exciting. One of the jobs in the Big 12 opens. Maybe it's Oklahoma State. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe he goes east and takes a job like NC State. Who knows? Somebody's at least going to call him, and I think that's a really interesting scenario. I don't know what he wants in terms of location. I don't know him. I don't have contacts at A&M like that. And he's got a pretty good gig. Like if you're at A&M, you're going to get a lot of talent to work with. That would be fun. That'd be a lot of fun. So especially right now, they got a really good offensive line too. Let's talk about Indiana. Not one, but two possible coaches. Personally, Brian Haynes is the guy I would want because it's so rare to see teams that don't recruit at an elite level do well on defense. Brian Kelly, well, he just got fired. He said something once that was brilliant because it's 100% on the mark. He said, offense, you can scheme and score. True. Defense is about recruiting. Also true. Because you're chasing the athletes on defense need to be better. It is about recruiting, even more so than offense. That's how I look at it. That being the case, Brian Haynes, will he be at Indiana University past the 2025 season? I'm not saying that Mike Shanahan is going to be at Indiana either, but if I could only have one, I would take the defensive guy that has figured it out with hardly any 4-star recruits and no 5-star recruits. Indiana's got a top 10 defense by just about any metric. They're really good. Is somebody going to hire him? Like, would Wisconsin hire him if that job came open? What about Indiana? Would they try to retain him? Would they try to overpay? Because what if Michigan State comes in and Magic Johnson's got that money? Michigan State, that should be one of your first calls. Like, if you want to, like, you're on the hook for $33 million. That's the buyout. Yeah. By the way, Jonathan Smith, I thought that was going to work. I missed on that one. I thought that was a great hire. It has not. With that being the case, who's next? Because it sounds like he could get fired sooner than later. If he was the next head coach to get fired, wouldn't surprise me. Unfortunate, but that's the business what we're in. To that end, there are a couple other guys that I want to talk about. One, kind of like James Franklin, I'd put him on my number 2 for ubiquitous, and that's Matt Campbell. He's at Iowa State. He's from the state of Ohio. I've heard that he grew up a Michigan guy, but that job's not open. Maybe it would be after next year if they fail, but it's not open. Played at Pittsburgh one year, then he transferred to Mount Union. He coached at Mount Union, came up through the ropes, and he's been at Iowa State about a decade. Is Matt Campbell done at his run there, especially if Rocco Beck moves on? Like, what would happen? Penn State? Michigan State? I doubt he'd go to Michigan State if he grew up a Michigan fan. That'd be kind of weird. But still, you never know. Who else? Who else could really be on the move? It's an outside shot that Stoops gets fired at Kentucky. They owe him a ton of money. The way that contract is structured, highly doubt Kentucky's going to change. I'm told Wisconsin's not going to make a move, which is crazy because they're going to finish 2-10 or 3-9. I think the only chance they have left to win a game is Minnesota. Possible. Arkansas, for those who don't know, Rhett Lashley, that's where he went to school. He went there. He was a quarterback for a while before he got injured and ended his career. Wouldn't shock me, but that's a terrible SEC job. You just don't get enough talent. Will Lashley leave Dallas and SMU to go back to Arkansas? Wouldn't be shocked, but again, that's not a very good job. Just something to think about. UCLA. At one point, I thought Tony White would be the guy because he's the defensive coordinator at Florida State. They started off good, but their defense is falling apart. I'd say he's lost a little luster. I have no idea who UCLA is going to hire, but I do know that school is extremely cheap because the school system / the state don't want to spend a lot of money on football, which probably means you're going to end up with somebody you shouldn't. We already talked a little bit about Virginia Tech, but with the right fit, that's a pretty good job. That was a top 10 program, and they played against Florida State after the 99 season when they had Vic for the national title. You can win big there. I don't know which person is their top of the board guy. I thought it would be Beamer, but obviously there's been discussion with Franklin if you've read anything. Who else are they interested in? Matt Campbell or anybody else? I don't know. We'll see. I still think that Campbell is the guy that Penn State should go after, but it sounds like Rule is more likely. That's the decision you want to make. Go that route. Have at it. I think that covers about everybody I have on my list. Let me read a few more comments here. Let's see. Any chance Fran Brown gets the Florida State job if it opens up? It's ironic. I actually did a podcast about Fran Brown regarding the Florida State job because I think he should be looked at. I think he should be looked at Florida, etc. One of the best recruiters in the country. He's a DB coach by trade, but his offense is lighted up. His offensive coordinator is really good, and he would probably come with him. I think he'd do really well. I don't know what Florida State's going to try to do, but those are possibilities. Let's see. Ronald Mathis. Eric Morrison, he is still at North Texas. Sam Hancock. Any big coordinators that are up for head coaching roles that are not big names currently? Ooh, that's a good question. Well, it probably would come down to fit and who you know there. FCS coaches too. Like, I don't know as much about that level. There's a few guys. The head coach, G.J. Kinney at Texas State. Like, I think he could be at a school. That's a possibility. But outside of that, like, I don't know about the FCS. I want to go ahead and throw that out. Other coordinators, though, I mean, Banks at Tennessee, definitely. He deserves a job. He's a Detroit guy originally, but he was at Penn State from 2016 to 2020. He's been at Tennessee from 21 to modern day. 2016 is the only year that James Franklin won the Big Ten title. Who was his defense coordinator? Banks. I think he would be a good hire for somebody like NC State, Virginia Tech. He knows how to scheme it up now. I think, if I remember right, Tennessee was number 1 in the nation last year, stopping the run. Pretty important category. And Tennessee made the playoff. Let's see who else. Coordinator-wise, one of the coordinators I would assume are coaches at North Texas. Like, good Lord, they just threw for over 600 yards in a game. No idea who it is. I would assume that's a possibility. Probably the Cincinnati offensive coordinator. Cincinnati, I don't know if many people know that. They're 7-1, and they should have lost no games. They probably should have beaten Nebraska in that opening game. Just saying. Sorsby threw a pick late in that game. Trying to think if there's any other coordinator off the top of my head. I'm sure I'm missing a few. But, what about this? Heatherman, the defensive coordinator at Miami. He's done a heck of a job for the Canes this year. That's possible. We talked about both Indiana coordinators. One of those two, I'm sure, is going to be gone. That's about all I can really think of. Well, forget his name, but the Arizona State offense coordinator. Dillingham doesn't call the plays. Again, I forget. Somebody can throw it in the chat if they want, but the Arizona State offense coordinator, he's pretty good. Arroyo, I think it is. But that's another possibility. Morris once had Patrick Mahomes. Oh, wow. That's a pretty good sign. In Morris's career, he landed Mahomes, Cam Ward, John Mateer, and Baker Mayfield. Holy crap. That is insane. Good for him. That is really good. All right. Well, if you got any more comments, anybody, fire away. But I want to make a couple of comments now about the portal. Next week, I expect to be the final week where it's even remotely quiet. Behind the scenes, like I've literally got messages, etc., regarding a player that's going to enter the portal that's a dude. Publicly, though, it's different. We've seen a few names, like Oklahoma State's getting ravaged, guys leaving. Okay. But I'm talking about holistically. For the record, 2 points here. Number one, there's only going to be one transfer portal window. Repeat, one window only. There will not be a spring window. That is done. The new window runs from the 2nd of January through the 16th. Here are the new rules for coaching changes and all that stuff. Moving forward, instead of your team fires a coach or he leaves, goes to the NFL, whatever. You used to get like a couple of days later, it opened a 30-day window. No longer. It's changed. Now, kids can still decide to leave, but instead it's a 15-day window when the new coach is hired. So that gives you a little time. I don't know if it's the day after, but it's right after pretty much. But that gives the new coach a chance to at least speak with the young people. Hey, this is what I'm going to do. Do we have a fit here? Or do you need to move on? I like it. I think that's good. But again, the one window is the 2nd of January, and it runs through the 16th. This is the one that's generic across the board. When there's a coaching change, you also, in addition to that one, have the one that's a 15-day window after the new coach is hired. That's if it was in February, if it was in December, whatever, it's the same deal. The bigger picture, though, I think about November 15th, that's going to be my guess because a lot of guys are going to try to get out and get their deal done, although behind closed doors, because the players and their agents know there's one window too. So it puts things in an expedited process for them. And that's extra onus for these agents of the universities that are trying to help them figure stuff out. Because a lot of these agents kind of work on both sides because they have a coach they're trying to get to a school, but the guy that just got fired is out. And when another guy that they're trying to get that he doesn't think should go there, like they're involved in a lot of ways, they need to help these schools get aligned quickly while still also getting their guys money. It's kind of a catch-22 because they want everybody to land softly. Whoever, like they might watch one of their coaches, the OC, DC head coach leave, and somebody that's another one of their clients come in. So they got to get this done as quickly as possible because they know that if their client goes in and it's ravaged already, they don't get them in time, the portal is wiped out, half their roster, good luck. I don't care who you are. You be Saban. That's going to be rough. As far as Saban, by the way, there's a lot of people saying LSU is going to call him and all that. And if they do, I think it'd be a great story. No clue. I don't know Nick. He's a great coach. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time in any sport. No idea. But it sounds like to me he has zero interest, and I mean zero, in dealing with NIL. So with that being said, I expect to see him on ESPN for another 5 years, and then he'll just go hang out with Miss Terry. That's my guess. Last thing here that I'll say, we're going to see a bunch of guys make deals behind closed doors that we hear about after the portal concludes, meaning late January to mid-March, this stuff will trickle out. Hey, I knew the coach I was going to coach or go play for. I just didn't know where that coach was going to be. There could be somebody that's at Penn State right now that's going to follow Franklin wherever we go. I guarantee it. Penn State's going to lose guys to James Franklin. That's just how this works. Players pick coaches more than they do schools. That's just part of the gig, man. That's just part of the gig. And it's not picking on anybody. That's just how it works. It's not necessarily a bad thing either, but players are going to do that. So think about some of the coaches that are out. Are a bunch of people going to fire or follow Brian Kelly if he goes and takes NC State or Michigan State or something? Probably not. But certain coaches, and Franklin, I'm telling you, he's very popular. There are going to be some Penn State players that follow him somewhere, especially if he ended up at Florida or LSU. Like, that's self-explanatory. But look for some backstories coming up a little bit later on. Temple of Brutus. Lane Kiffin's wife surfing Baton Rouge homes and med spas, and guess what? They ain't none. 5 homes in Boca for sale right now, over $1.25 million, and they need to build 3+ more med spas just for Kiffin's family. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. I don't know if Kiffin is seriously interested in the LSU job. I would assume. For the record, I would personally rather have the Florida job because I think it's more stable with how that state is run. There's a lot of upheaval right now with the job at LSU because there's a transfer of power with the president, like literally this week, small world. And the governor is not very happy with how the LSU athletic department's being run. That would make me nervous. In a normal situation, I can see somebody saying LSU's ahead of Florida or even the best job in the country because it's so easy to recruit. That state, in my opinion, is the most loyal to an elite program of any state in the country. That's why LSU is so coveted, but it's also, final point, I've lived in that state. I went to grad school there for a little while before I transferred to Ball State to finish it up. It is not a normal place for an outsider to come. Kiffin can kind of adapt. He's lived in LA. He's lived in South Florida. He's lived in Oxford. He's seen about everything, but not many people would fit in at LSU, to be really honest. I think it's a little easier to fit in Gainesville, which is a really neat town. Florida also has an interim president. That's wild. I did not know that. This is crazy. Like, how ironic is that? And thank you, Ronald, for that statement. It's weird, man. Like, that stuff matters. You want the president, like the long-term one, to have say. The head coach needs to know that person. I don't know if that'll impact Kiffin, but thank you for that info. It's pretty wild. Temple of Brutus. Louisiana governor said, do not raise ticket prices. Yeah, he's right, by the way. I don't know the guy. I can't even remember his name, but he went out on X and posted, hey, the LSU athletic department should not raise prices until it's like earned to that point. And this is what he's talking about. Look, LSU's fans should be ticked because they didn't get beat by A&M. They got bludgeoned. It's wild. And they were up at halftime. It's so weird. So weird. Temple of Brutus. SEC is a mess. They're all going to go broke with buyouts and new $50 million contracts all running together. Unsustainable. Post of the day. Last point. I brought this up recently on a show. These 10-year contracts are dumb. Dumb. You cannot keep giving everybody guaranteed deals. And it's another reason, I'll throw this in as just a bonus. I think we're going to see more dumping into the realm of offensive and defensive coordinator, a little both. Because of that, you're more likely to only sign a 5 to 7 year deal with a coordinator and then accept it. That's just what I think. Somebody like James Franklin that's established, maybe he gets an 8-year deal or something. But most guys, I think the 10-year deal outside of like Kiffin is over. That's just my opinion. We'll see if I'm right. Thank you to everybody that stopped in today. We'll be doing another one of these tomorrow. I really, really enjoy them. It's a lot of fun. And I enjoy everybody's comments. If you've got any questions or anything, same for tomorrow. Again, noon Eastern, we'll be talking recruiting and all the different stuff. I'll go back into the list every couple of days, talk about all the commitments and decommitments. But I wanted to give my thoughts out on the coaching carousel because, again, I think Michigan State's coming close to coming open, and don't be surprised if Oklahoma does. So this is going to get cloudier yet. If Oklahoma loses to Tennessee, and especially if they get smoked, they got Bama on the road, good luck. That's going to be really interesting. Venables would be a really interesting job. Appreciate y'all. Oh, thank you very much, Ronald. He says, thanks, Brian. Drop a like, follows. I appreciate that very much. If you have not, please like and subscribe. We're having a lot of fun here on the Portal Podcast, covering recruiting, NIL, coaching carousel, and everything that goes on with roster management. Everybody be safe and have a great day.